Good afternoon, everyone. I believe it's 1:10, so I certainly want to make sure that we start on time. By a show of hands, who has ever told their clients that they should not worry about their estate planning and to heck with those beneficiary designations?
Somebody must be telling me.
What about telling a young family, hey, you don't need to worry about guardianship provisions? Probably no one, right? I didn't see any hands go up. Probably, I'm assuming it's not because of the food coma that some of us might be in after lunch, but that would just be simply terrible advice. So if you're giving your clients that great advice as to how to make sure that their own personal plan is insulated, why the heck wouldn't you do that for your business? And so that's exactly what Tim Wyman's going to talk to us about today. You hear a lot of things in theory and articles and books on succession planning. So Tim and Peggy are going to talk a little bit about, how the Center for Financial Planning has done succession planning over the years, some successes, some misses that we've had, to kind of give you a more real-world look at succession planning and continuity, or successful succession and continuity planning. Excuse me. Tim Wyman is an attorney, certified financial planner, and the managing director at Center for Financial Planning. He attended Albion College for undergrad studies and currently serves the Endowment Investment Committee for the college. After starting his own financial planning firm, Tim went to law school during the evenings, graduated cum laude from Detroit College of Law at Michigan State University. After passing the bar exam upon graduation, Tim joined the center as a tuck-in in 1999, and he became a partner in 2004 and has been the firm's managing partner for just over a decade. For the second consecutive year in 2019, Forbes included Tim in its Best in State Wealth Advisors list in Michigan. He was also named a 2018 Financial Times 400 Top Financial Advisor. Lastly, Tim has served the local FPA chapter over the years and also served on the National Board of Directors for the Financial Planning Association from 2005 to 2007. On a personal note, I've had the pleasure of working with Tim for the past 6.5 years at the center. I consider Tim a mentor and a friend, and can't think of a better person to share his wisdom and information on this important topic with everyone today. So with that, I'll hand it off to Tim.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Nick. Well, you'll see that Nick and I both went to the same speaking school because I'm also going to ask you to raise your hand. Right. So I'm thinking if you're a firm founder or work in a firm that has strong core values, anyone out there, you guys have good, strong core values? Anyone? Shout, what are some of the core values that your firms live by? Education. Integrity. Clients first. Peggy's nodding, yes, in agreement. Help each other. Wonderful. One of my favorite sayings is when your values are clear, your decisions are easy. And like you all, the center has a set of core values. We're not real bright there, so we have to go by the word center to remind us what they are. Commitment to financial planning, education and personal growth, nice and kind, teamwork and collaboration, energy and enthusiasm, and my favorite is real and down to earth. And in the spirit of that last one, Nick said my bio just how I wrote it. I mean, I really appreciate that. But my real bio is more like I'm a free lunch program kid from Dearborn, Michigan. First in my family to graduate from college. I was an average student at best until my junior year of college when I had my first financial planning or money and banking actually class, and became a decent student then. After graduation, I wanted to be a financial planner, and in 1991, that meant selling life insurance. That was what I did as a financial planner. After a few years, they wanted to make me a manager, and I said, I need to leave here because I'm terrible at this. Why would you want to make me a manager? So I hung up my own shingle, had way too much overhead, and with the support of my wife, decided to go back to law school during the evenings, even though I didn't have any intentions to practice law full time. So after passing the bar, by stroke of luck, I found Center for Financial Planning. And it was the best career move that I could have made by far. I had a chance to get in a group that was very focused on succession planning, help be a part of that succession. Not only be a part of it, I help craft it. As Nick said, certainly the last 10 years have had a large part in implementing it. And it's interesting, now at 50, and I know I don't look a day over 75, but now at 50, I'm seeing succession planning in a little bit different light. So it's been a real, I'll say, interesting, fun, challenging process to be, 30 years old, seeing others retire successfully, and now contemplating my exit over the next, hopefully, 10 or 15 years. One of the benefits of serving our professional organizations, whether it's FPA Michigan or at the national level like I did, is you get to meet a lot of different people, you get to learn from a lot of folks. And when I was on the FPA National Board, I got to become friends with an outstanding planner in the Dallas area. And I'll never forget, he was practicing for about 30 years, cared for his clients like you would want a fellow professional to care for clients. And over the years, he tried to bring on junior partners, he called them, people to help with his succession, and unfortunately, without success. And after 30 years, he literally closed his doors. His clients were left to fend for themselves, and he received zero for his life's work. Another gentleman, a planner I met from Memphis, Tennessee, after practicing about 10 years, had a terrible accident and died. And rather than his family receiving, compensation for what he built over the last 10 years, instead his broker-dealer essentially reassigned clients. He didn't have an agreement on file, and his family received nothing. And these are not unusual, unfortunately. They're quite common in our profession. And I like to think, now let's contrast that with, imagine for a minute that you dedicated your career to financial planning. You took care of your clients like they were family. You helped educate their children, helped them retire successfully, grew their net worth, which I think is real noble work. And after doing that, you got to train and mentor the next generation of advisors, and you passed those clients on to people that you had a lot of faith in. You knew your clients were going to be well taken care of, and then you received significant compensation. A little bit different than the first two examples, and I think it's fair to say that there are some of those wonderful examples, probably not enough. So after 28 years in this business, I feel like I've seen a lot of these scenarios play out. It's been an honor to be part of one of the succession plans that have been well thought out, by no means perfect, which I'll try to hit on that as well, but have really seen tremendous benefits for retired partners, next generation of owners, and last but certainly not least, clients as well. So to that end, our agenda, we're going to talk about succession and continuity planning, figure out what's the big deal anyway, talk about some of the options and focus on a few that we've been involved with, including where to look for successors, or if you're a successor, where to find someone who's retiring perhaps that you can help out. Try to share some resources and certainly answer any questions that you might have. My goal today is simply to share. I think Nick mentioned that we've had a lot of things work well, and we've had a lot of things that haven't worked, and I like to say haven't worked yet, right? Maybe it's a little bit early. Unlike Steve Ballmer in this picture, I'm not here to advocate for anything. I'm here to share the things that we have done. We know that our process, our way is merely one way to handle continuity and succession planning. But I hope you'll find some practical suggestions regardless of the life cycle that you're currently in. And I've been using continuity planning, succession planning interchangeably, and I probably will incorrectly continue to do so. But if you talk to consultants, continuity planning usually is somewhere around incapacitation or death. You as a practitioner are unable to serve your clients. Whereas succession planning, I love the definition by FP Transitions that basically says succession planning is this gradual transition of both ownership and leadership to the next generation. And many times continuity planning and succession planning go hand in hand, or one leads to the other. But succession planning is really about building a strong, enduring, and I like to say endearing business, one that you're truly proud of, that others who are working in your business are truly proud of. So again, call it whatever you want, continuity planning, succession planning. I think there's two main ingredients that you need to be thinking about, and that is caring for clients and retaining revenue, because without both of those, I don't think really there's no continuity or succession period. So I don't know about you guys, but even today, I think I read 3 different articles that had to do with continuity or succession planning. Right? It seems like you can't open up your email or an industry publication, a blog, a Michael Kitz's podcast without reading something about continuity or succession planning. Angie Herbers is a consultant mostly in the RIA world. And she says the number one challenge facing the independent advisory channel today is succession planning. And I don't know if it is the most important, but to me it's probably up at the top. Anyone agree with Angie's thoughts? Is it number one? I'm seeing some nods there. Yeah. Out of curiosity, what are some of the other top challenges for advisor or advisory firms today? Say that again? Cybersecurity. Yeah, the stats are pretty staggering that all of us in this room will probably be hit in our career. What else?
Finding good talent.
Finding good talent. Yeah, and I would say, as I talk about, certainly that's a part of succession planning, right? One of the challenges. Yeah, I don't know if it's the number one, but it certainly is in the top 3. You know the demographics behind this, and I like to think, because they did this in law school, when they basically said, turn to your left, look at the person to your left, turn to the person to your right, and guess what? One of you in 10 years will not be here. It's a real comforting thought, isn't it? But it's suggesting that 1/3 of us expect to exit the profession over the next 10 years. I hope that's a successful succession and not one because we're out of business. The next one shouldn't be too much of a surprise because, for the most part, we're running small businesses, and running a small business is difficult, right? So 99% will not survive the founder's retirement. And I was talking to earlier, Noah, right? Earlier about as a profession, we're in this interesting phase where most firms are still owned, if not 100%, 80% by the founders. So it's going to be a real interesting 10 or 20 years are we as a profession actually going to be able to make the transition like many medical practices, legal practices, and even accounting practices have done for many, many years. Not only, I remember telling clients, your house is your most important asset. And then we had the 1995 through 1999 run, and I said, your 401k is your largest asset. I think for many in this room, your planning practice is your most valuable asset. And without a plan, it's highly perishable and can be like my friend from Dallas, where there's no value seen from it at all. And so obviously we want to talk about how to avoid that. I'm not sure that this is an area that should be regulated or legislated, but professional responsibility to me means as professionals we care for our clients. And as we're talking about continuity and succession planning, we need to make sure that we're keeping clients in the formula, in the mix, that they're also top of mind. There have been some proposed legislation that as an RIA, if you're a registered investment advisor, that you need to have a succession plan or continuity plan in place. Again, I'm not a fan of regulation for it, but I do think it needs to be on our mind. And so how are we doing as a profession? Good, not so good, terrible, somewhere between not so good and terrible so far, right? 73% lack of formal succession plan. I think this makes sense that larger firms are doing a little bit better than smaller firms, right? Usually the larger firms, you have more advisors or that ensemble practice. So that's not real surprising to me, but the 60% was still surprising. So help me with my math. If you have a firm with $500 million in assets, and if we can use a standard 1% assets under management fee, we'll call it a $5 million revenue. So we're talking about a business that might have a valuation of close to $10 million and 40% have no plan. That's pretty staggering to me, at least. And in case the stats don't move you, I like to keep things simple, and Tim Coaches, who some of you may know, he is a true pioneer in the field. He ran Coaches Fits in California. To me, was a poster child firm. They had an accounting background, came out of Deloitte, and several years ago, he essentially replaced himself, and they merged what is now called Aspirient in California. They have several different locations, but I take Tim to basically say, I love it, accept it, get over it. We're all going to be replaced. It quite is that simple. But what is simple doesn't always mean it's easy. And Bo Burlingham wrote a book called Small Giants. Michael Kitces in his last podcast just wrote about the Small Giants book. He also just put out a book on helping owners with exiting. And he made this comment that essentially the transfer of leadership and ownership is probably the hardest transition that any business will go through. So I think that the numbers suggest as a industry we have a long way to go in this area. And we'd like to think Center for Financial Planning has some experience. My founders might not appreciate these pictures, but I just love them. These three folks founded the center in 1985, and I will tell you they are three of the most generous folks that I ever had the privilege to meet and work with. Estelle Wade retired in 2003, Marilyn Gunther in the middle in 2014, Dan Boyce in 2015. And I like to say a couple things. One, they all retired what I will consider successfully, and I'm very proud that all three and their families are clients of our firm. So I usually will share that with clients that they've seen the skeletons. They think it's a pretty decent place to take care of them. But think about it. They received considerable compensation for the business that they built. They knew that their clients were well served by advisors that they mentored and trained. And during my comments, I'm going to talk about some of the perhaps keys that I think were important in a successful internal transition. The next would be an important ingredient that we're finding or have found with successful internal transition, succession planning, are what I call tuck-ins. Some people are calling them plug-ins. So Lori Renchek, who's one of our partners, joined the firm in 2005. She had a practice in Ortonville on her own for many years and decided to tuck into the center. Nick and Matt Trujillo, I think, are around, joined us in 2013. Bob Jackie joined us in 2017, as did Peggy Hall Davenport, who you're going to hear about. And she's going to share some of her thoughts because she's going through a transition right now, and I think you're going to enjoy her candid comments. Unscripted, right? Unscripted, yeah. So again, I 20 years ago was a tuck-in or a plug-in, and I think they're an important piece of succession planning. The third area is continuity, or what I call catastrophic planning. And over the years, we've had continuity or catastrophic plans with several local firms, usually sole proprietors running anywhere from a couple $100,000 in revenue, as much as $3 million in revenue. And these plans essentially said, hey, if the advisor is incapacitated, can't serve clients, that our firm would step in, serve their clients, and just as important, would pay them or their heirs. So it wasn't a merger and acquisition. They weren't part of our firm, but we've had several of these, and I can think one gentleman in Franklin actually uses it as from a marketing standpoint with new clients. Because I don't know about you, when you're dealing with a little bit higher net worth clients, many times they want to know that it's not just one person. And this advisor would say, I was very upfront. I want you to know I have an agreement with a local planning firm. Sometimes they would name us, sometimes not. But if something happens to me, you're going to be cared for by someone who I handpicked. And he would say that it was very important in his business. Now, when it comes to continuity plans, catastrophic plans, I think ensemble groups or larger practices, multiple advisors have some built-in plans. As a solo advisor, or even I'll call Eat What You Kill, and the center at one time we were in Eat What You Kill. We were all under one name, but clearly revenue was siloed. And during those days, we actually had a unique agreement, I think, amongst ourselves. First, we said, each of us, you know what your family needs. You buy life insurance based on your family need, and you're gonna pay for that. That was the succession plan. All right. The second thing, at least thinking about clients, was this. We all had signed letters in a file, right, that if something happened to me, that letter went out to the clients that I was responsible for serving and said, hey, unfortunately, something has happened to Tim. He can no longer practice, in my words, but again, I've handpicked these folks who I believe are going to take care of you. That's how we handled in the early days as silos. The other part, kind of I mentioned earlier, if you have a broker-dealer relationship, you probably all know this, but you need to make sure any of those types of plans are on file with the broker-dealer. I have seen situations now where broker-dealers will not pay your family, your heirs, and they will say they're legally not able to. It's illegal for them to pay unless they have an agreement on file. So make sure you do that. I think these catastrophic plans are great ways for folks to, advisors to start dating, if you will, right? Before a merger or an acquisition or a tuck-in. You might make sure you have with one of these folks. I don't think that our firm has gotten this one right yet. I think in the past we may have spent a lot more time than we should have on an unlikely event. And the other was we had different financial agreements or arrangements, and that didn't feel comfortable. So to the extent we do them in the future without trying to dictate what the terms are, we pretty much have a term sheet and say, you know what, we need to be in this general area in order for us to be your continuity or catastrophic partner. Okay? So today we are, after about 34 years, we think we have some experience in this space. We have 5 current owners, total team members, 27, 28 folks. Like most of you, I assume we provide financial planning and investment management services. We call kind of middle America, maybe the semi-affluent. It's not your high net worth clientele by any means. And we manage about just under $1.2 billion currently. But I'd say most importantly, we have second and third generation ownership. So we think we're doing something to have a sustainable ownership structure and have been able to solve many of the challenges as it relates to succession planning. So what are some of the succession options? I've listed a few here. The first one, ride it out. This is the dying with your boots on. I was just talking with Tom Rabowski. He was talking about someone who that clearly is their plan, and he said, I think when that's someone's plan, it might be because they really don't have a plan. So I struck through it. It can be a good exit plan. If you look at the finances of dying with your boots on, financially it can make a lot of sense. You probably can earn as much money over that time period as doing an internal succession or selling it externally. The reason I've crossed it out is it's really an exit strategy, and for me, it doesn't consider clients. But perhaps it's appropriate for you. External sales sound really good sometimes. SEI says that less than 10% of our businesses are actually viable sale candidates. It just doesn't happen very often. At the same time, there are 50 buyers for every one seller. So if you're looking to make an external transaction, you will have a lot of dates. That's the good news. You have a lot of people who are going to be interested in that. And as a quick aside, you've read a lot of private equity firms are buying up advisory practices, and I'd say a couple things about that. One, they're usually buying $500 million in asset firms and up, and that's not most of us. And the second is I'm kind of a believer that professional services firms should be owned by people who are providing services to the end client. So I'm a little concerned about private equity deals that are happening, but maybe that's a conversation in the hallway or for another day. Mergers, we've been down the merger route a couple of times, and it's not currently in our plans. But they certainly can be very valuable. We found challenge that we worked really hard on our business culture, and it's very hard to merge cultures with similar size groups. So that's been a real challenge for us. The other is just practice methods. Give you an idea, we have a local planner, think a lot about him. His investment process is picking individual stocks. And even though he's good at it, that's not how we operate. That would be a really tough thing to mesh. So handshake, great person, just not a good fit. So we have not found the right merger candidate. Two that I want to talk about are the tuck-in and the internal succession. But how about from here? What's not on this list? What are some other options? Go public? Probably not. No. Child succession?
This industry had their name on it, and they're considering themselves, we're going to take it over. I'm a woman with a daughter. We had different names.
She can still run it. That's okay. Yeah. But certainly you're seeing more family type businesses, right? And I won't rat him out today, but I know there's one gentleman here who his father is in the business, and sure enough, he's in the business as well. If the U.S. Army lets one of my kids out, maybe he will join our firm, but I don't see it. The only other one that I could think of after doing the presentation was this whole idea about sell and stay. Some people are selling their business now but not retiring. Right? So you sell the client base and you continue to work and be compensated as an advisor, but you don't have the ownership responsibilities or benefits. Yeah, there was a question in back. Yes?
No, I was just going to say I'm one of those people.
One of those people.
I am one of those people.
A sell and stay?
Yeah.
Wonderful. And your name is?
I'm Chris Howell. I am third generation financial planner. I sold my practice to my young partner that I've been working with for the last 7 years. And so it was a sell. He bought it. I now am employed. I work for him. But the one thing I do want to share a little bit is I'm an S Corp. And if any of you know, most of our businesses are goodwill. Goodwill is taxed at 27%. What I did was I gifted 70% of the goodwill of my business to a CRT. Set it up for a 20-year pay. My young partner bought 70% of my business from the CRT. I paid no tax. So some of the stay and work through has a lot to do with taxes, and that was a solution for us.
Thanks for sharing. And catch Chris in the hallway. I'm sure you're going to have some folks asking some questions. That's wonderful. So how do you figure out what CRT, sell and stay, internal succession, you're a tuck-in or want to be a tuck-in? How do you figure out which one's best for you? And this is going to sound strange, but take a page out of the planner playbook, right? I mean, start with the why. Do some deep discovery. What the heck are you trying to accomplish in the first place? And there was this great report. I don't have it with me, but it was put out by SEI. And it was taking you through the process. And the reason I loved it was so brutally honest. Like the first one, clients. Be honest. Are clients, what happens to clients important to you or not? You know, if they're truly not, then that may take you to a different option. But if they are, then you know what? Maybe we need to look at the dollars and it's not all about maximum value. And I should say maximum dollars because it could be the combination of good value. But look it up if you want to send me an email after for the workbook. I absolutely loved it, put out by SEI. So again, we've looked at, we've chosen internal succession planning because we believe that it provides what I like to call the triple win. It's a win for clients, it's a win for advisors who are retiring, and it's a win for the firm or the next generation. And that to me is the ideal. And one of the tactics is, as part of an internal succession, is tuck-ins, whether it's career or retirement. It hasn't been an easy road for us. Apparently in 2001 we could not afford color photos. But this was the group of 12 in 2001. 4 of us are still here. If I could, there's probably a pointer on here, but on the far right, you'll see Matt Chope and Sandy Adams, 2 of our partners. What's that? Sandy is in the back, Matt's right here. And here's what we look today. We got a lot better camera. You'll see some younger faces. We're a little unique that we're 2/3 female, 1/3 male. Our 5 partners, there are 3 women, 2 men. Our planners are split evenly. Like many, our operations group still more predominantly female, but it's something that we do give thought to in our hiring process. And the 2 greatest challenges, I'd say, are of internal successions, the runway time and the investment in developing people. Runway time and the fact that it can be challenging to develop folks. The third close one here would be ownership structure and specifically ownership compensation. And to kind of go through some of that. 1995, that would have been 10 years after the center's founding. So after 10 years of being together, the founders said, hey, we want to make sure we have a viable business for decades to come. It's not just all about us. And Sandy Adams and Matt Chope joined. I mentioned they're both current partners. Some other things in 2005, and I'm using this language specifically, there was a decision not to have the business driven by individual or silos, right? I didn't say anything about action yet. 2005, we started professional development plans and tracks for all. I'll touch on a second. And 2009 is when Dan and Marilyn said, you know what, here's when we're going to retire. So we really started talking about client transition, what was in their best interest, how were we going to make it as smooth as possible. And 2010, one of the most challenging things was new compensation structure for partners. At the time, it was really mostly Matt Chope and myself. And we said, no more eat what you kill. We're going to have a salary. We're going to have incentive comp. And as an owner, you're going to get a profit distribution. And you can hear my voice raise a little bit. When I look and talk to other advisors that say they're a group, they're an ensemble, they're one firm, there's actually a concept, the one firm. And one of the biggest things is look at owner compensation, and that's going to tell you what kind of firm you're dealing with. It was not an easy transition, excuse me. So I mentioned this professional development or partnership track. We have opportunities for both planners and operations people to be partners. We found as we've grown that operations folks are just as important as planners, very unique. So on the bottom left there, Angie Palacio is our Director of Investments. She became a partner at the beginning of the year, January of 2019. Lauren Adams is our Director of Operations. She's on a partnership track as well. Speeding up here a little bit, I mentioned the tuck-in plan that we have. We're looking for folks like Matt and myself, Lori, when they join the firm. They may have some revenue, maybe like me, struggling. So if you're looking for that next generation person, chances are they're at this conference, and I think you just need to talk with folks. And just because they have their own shingle doesn't mean that they're not a good tuck-in or someone who may have an interest in joining an attractive firm. And you have to be an attractive firm these days. Mark Tibergien talks about being the employer of choice. And so we focus on the team member experience just as much as we focus on the client experience. And we love awards, not just for awards, but that means we're doing the right thing. And then we have this succession tuck-in strategy, because we're not real smart or creative at naming things. But for us, we're looking for, we've found that the best candidate is someone 2 years but no more than 5 years out. And that leads me to Peggy Hall Davenport, who I'm going to invite up here. Peggy joined us in 2017. And I thought it would be fun to, I don't know, maybe grill her on a few questions and her thought process. So 2017, you joined the center as part of your ultimate retirement succession. Is that fair?
That's fair.
And it was an easy decision?
No, we dated for over a year before that happened. So that was interesting. Just making the decision to take my shingle down with my name, my identity, was very difficult for me. Very difficult. And I said no thank you at one point. And then I was wooed back. I knew the founding partners. I started in business the same time they did. I approached Dan Boyce about coming with his branch in 1990, but he said no, only if you have your office with us, that's the only way we'll take you. And I said no thanks. And that's when I went on my way and developed my own practice as a solo practitioner in Brighton, Michigan. So I've been in touch, and I was in the same branch with Matt for a while, and anyway,
So let me
we'll leave it
add,
at that.
2017, forget the center or firm. What was the process of making the decision that, you know what, I need to figure this succession thing out? I mean, that had to be a challenging process.
Yes, and it started almost at the same time that I became an independent. I had been in a partnership. We didn't even talk about succession planning before 1990. And after 1990, by myself, I thought that I would actually probably have a partner, somebody that would work with me, and we could work on clients together, and that would be part of a succession plan. That did not materialize. And part of the reason it didn't materialize is you have to have the same thought process in dealing with clients. You have to have the same philosophy. And I've been a financial planner since 1980. I was told at my first firm, don't do that, but that's something that I really love to do. So that's what I did. And a lot of advisors are using planning as a lure to get clients in to manage their money. And I think both are really important.
So when you started looking at different avenues for succession, what were some of the top things? Was it all about clients? Was it all about dollars? Was it about flexibility for you? What were some of the key,
When I finally woke up one day and said, hey, I'm over 60, I need to really get serious about this. It isn't just happening. It's like trying to date. You wait for someone to come in your life. That doesn't happen. You have to go seek them. And my biggest concern was the care of my clients. I wanted competent advisors who would take good care of them and make sure that they continued at least the level or better than what I had been doing all these years. So I wanted competent advisors. Secondly, was my retirement. I wanted that to be successful. And I did not want to work until I died. And there were days when I thought it might happen imminently. During the financial crisis, I thought that I might just fall down on the front of my desk one day, but that didn't happen, so I'm lucky enough to still be here.
So you sold all your boots so you can't die in your boots,
Right.
right?
I don't want
No
that to
boots in the
happen.
house.
No boots.
So I guess you've been associated with the center. We have this agreement that clients will ultimately be transitioned. You will receive some compensation. You feel good about what's gone right so far over, help me with, this is about 2 years?
It's been 2 years officially.
Okay.
I would say that what's gone right is I had already segmented my clients. I used an ABC method. The center uses a 1-2-3 method that worked. The successor advisors that I'll transition my practice to have been terrific. My clients, when we have dual meetings, and we've been doing that this year, my clients have been very receptive for the most part. Almost every one of them has been. And what I see during the meeting is they're now turning their attention to the new person and asking them questions to get to know them a little bit better. And when I can, I try to have it happens during the meeting, but there's something that I can turn to the new advisor and say, could you explain that to Mr. and Mrs. Jones? And they do that very well.
So we've found really important, whether it was founders transitioning or any client transition, that a 2-year period worked really well. And the first year, the second advisor is, I'll say, in the meeting, contributes as he or she is able, but doesn't do any of the prep necessarily. And then the second year, the new planner is the one running that meeting. And it really has worked well. I think clients see that the transition is occurring. They've seen this person for 2 years. They get a sense that these are competent, caring people as well. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some challenges in our experience if it goes too long or if it's too short. So 2 years has been our magic number.
And I'm in the first year of that transition. So some of my clients are still shocked, even though I've been telling them for a few years that I'm going to be retiring. I've had people say, well, I thought you'd stay till I died. And I said, you're too healthy, that's not gonna work. But they're wishing me the best, and some people want my personal number so that they can continue to be friends, which is kind of nice.
All right. So this can be short if you want, but I'm assuming not everything has gone as expected or planned or perfect.
No.
And remember, Nick's in the room. No. So what are some of the things that, and I like to say, haven't worked yet? What are some of those things?
Well, I think I'm going to step back a little bit and talk about one of the things that has worked really well, and that's that I had a transition team. I had people at the firm that stepped up and said, I will help Peggy transition to be able to use our software and our methodologies and the way that we handle clients in this office. And they helped me, and that was really nice to know that I had a team that would do that. But the things that didn't work as well as I would have liked, I love software and I like to be the master of the software. I don't like it to master me. And that was one of the biggest challenges, was the CRM system that's used at the center is a lot more robust than what we used at the broker-dealer. And learning to make that software work for me, I would say that I'm still in probably the 60 to 75% mastery range of that. I haven't learned to make it bend to my will yet, but I'm getting there. And then I had not been completely paperless. So I had initially 4 horizontal file cabinets full of paper. Even though we had been, my assistant and I had been scanning paperwork for many years and saving that, we still had a lot of paper. It's just easier to leave it sit there than do something with it. I'm down to 1 file cabinet. We worked very hard on that, and I expect that by the time I retire, that I'll have that paper scanned into the system.
Okay. In the spirit of time, I'm going to have you stay up here because there
Right.
might be a question for you. So how do we find folks, you find folks like Peggy, is, just saying, be very clear. I've got 3 minutes, so we'll take that right after. My partner, Matt Choate, made this comment: how do you find a successor? If you're a younger person and you're wondering, look to the person to your left or right and say, hey, what's your succession plan? I mean, it's really, it's that easy, right? Would that be offensive? Like, wait.
That's exactly what happened. Matt, I don't know if you
He
knew that.
claims that's what happened. I
That is
just
what
didn't
happened.
believe him, but
That is what happened.
you just asked. Professional meetings are one of the best places. I was a member of the center. They became very comfortable with me because I served on a committee, FPA Michigan committee, with one of the team members of the center. I had instant credibility. They saw me that I didn't have, horns coming out of my head for the last 2 years. So these meetings are super fantastic. FPA transitions, we've never hired them. I think they're one of the best right now putting content out around this. I would go to their website, read up. The ensemble practice is Philip Palaviv. He used to be at Moss Adams. We have hired him on several occasions. He's top notch in my opinion. He's a protege of Mark Tabergian, who I think I've read every single article Mark has put out for the last 10 years. And then there's this website, SEI, talks about acquisition and succession planning that I found really, really helpful. When I think about successful succession and continuity planning, it's about this idea of triple wins. Wins for clients, wins for retiring advisors, and wins for the next generation or the advisory firms themselves. We found that it has taken a significant amount of time and money, but it's been very well worth it. And it absolutely can be done. And with that, we say good luck and thanks for having us today.